President Trump has invoked the Defense Production Act 33 times since the beginning of the pandemic. Total spending through the DPA is about $3.2 billion to fight COVID-19. The government could face problems when working to procure the items that it needs so quickly. Bill Greenwalt's visiting fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Industrial Policy. Bill, thanks for coming on the program. What are you seeing as the government uses the DPA in various capacities? What's jumping out at you, Bill?
Well, I think there are the issue of going too fast, and traditionally DPA has been used about $40–50 million a year, and now putting that kind of money through a system that may not be quite ready to do that could create all sorts of potential problems down the road.
There are a number of questions around the most recent invocation of the DPA, Bill, and that was a $765 million loan to Kodak for drug ingredients. Raised eyebrows on Wall Street, especially because nobody had any idea Kodak knew anything at all about creating drug ingredients. Turns out they didn't, and there's some other things going on there behind the scenes potentially. Is that a sign of the DPA not working right, moving too quickly? Or is that something that we might be able to attribute to some other issue?
I think it's relating to how quickly they're trying to go, and frankly, applying this to not only just COVID supply and COVID vaccine development, but now we're trying to get into industrial-based planning as far as dealing with precursors of chemicals that, frankly, the Chinese have a monopoly on. I mean, this is all good policy, but the issue is, should you move this quickly on something like that, and without having kind of a complete competition or vetting of this? And also, this is a new authority. I should say it's a new old authority. We have not done a DPA loan in quite some time, and so just trying to get that off the mark with a new agency that's now in charge of doing that loan, all sorts of interesting things could happen.
Take me back to the beginning of the DPA. What was the intention when it was created? Who's supposed to use it, and what kinds of uses was it intended for, Bill?
Well, it really goes back to World War II, when we were trying to increase production and bring in the commercial marketplace to do defense-type production and development. And those authorities in World War II lapsed. And when the Korean War kicked off, the idea was that we needed the same type of authorities for Korea. So the Defense Production Act of 1950 was passed to do this, to allow the Department of Defense to invest in firms, to partner with them, to give loans, to create the industrial base that's needed for a rapid mobilization of capability.
Is there a debate in the defense acquisition community about whether it's appropriate to use the DPA for things like COVID response? Because when I think about defense, I think national security, and I think hardware and items needed to fight war. Or does the fact that the president's using the terminology, and others, to be fair, are using the terminology, we're in a war against the virus, does that make it kind of okay, I guess?
Well, the Congress has given expanded the authority beyond DOD to DHS and HHS and so on over the years, and to deal with these type of situations. The issue is, do we need to always react so fast, in the sense that we should have been prepared and started thinking about this years ago, or in this case in January, and starting to look at the industrial base and execute. And the fact that all of a sudden everything is a crisis, and we begin putting money down on the DPA is going to create problems that I think Congress is going to start looking at, and frankly, it'll potentially impact the authority as we go forward.
Well, I'll ask the same question about special authorities like this that people ask about other kinds of special authorities all the time. At what point do we OTAs is one example. At what point do we decide, instead of that being the exception to the rule, at what point do we decide it should become the rule if it's a more efficacious way of getting what an organization needs in government?
Well, it depends on what the authorities are trying to do. So, for example, for OTAs, the idea is we want to try to bring in non-traditional companies that don't necessarily use the traditional contracting method. And the traditional contracting method is in place for a number of reasons, particularly when we have sole source arrangements with contractors that are monopolies that we need to figure out a way to price and assess their costs. If we're trying to bring in somebody like a Google or an Amazon or an Apple or a venture-backed private firm, and there are other things we have to put in place, and those capabilities are the best way to do that. I don't think we're quite ready to take OTAs and bring them to the traditional contractors, but at the same time, that's actually a lot of what we're doing right now, and we could get in trouble for doing it.
Bill Greenwalt, thanks very much as always.